coming up next.
Yeah, it is different because to me, the medicine that we get, it first should start with your food. And that's why in the book, there's a lot of spices that are in there that are just considered food, like cayenne pepper and garlic and basil and rosemary, things that people are familiar with, but might not realize the power of the serious medicine that they contain for just like skin health and digestive health and metabolism and heart health. Like cayenne is really good for your heart. It's good for your vascular system. It's good for so many things. So my main reason for really updating my dad's work and bringing this out is not just honoring his legacy, but helping people realize that our health is really simple and we need to take it back to the foods that we eat.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You are here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction, your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Joya, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter, a woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome back to Faith Over Addiction, the podcast where we are serving women and helping them to find their identity in Christ, take care of themselves so that they can be a safe, wonderful home place for those in their family that struggle with addiction. Today we have Jane Barlow Christensen. She was so kind to send me this wonderful book, and we're going to be talking about medicines that people have been using for thousands of years, but seem to have gotten buried under our Western style of medicine. And Jane, I'd love for you to start with the story about your dad and his inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised really different, and you don't realize that to the level until you grow up. I'm second oldest of 14 kids. My parents met in college, and my mom said to my dad while they were dating, I want a dozen kids. So my dad was like, all right, let's do this. So they had 11 and they adopted three. They adopted three little kids that were tiny and also siblings of their own. So we just grew up in this really huge family. My dad was a medicinal botanist. So if you think about growing up in first of all, a big family. You kind of do things off the grid a little bit because we couldn't afford to eat out. We couldn't really afford to, there's just not a lot of things that you can afford when you grow up with a big family like that. So we didn't go to the doctor. Besides, my dad was a botanist and he understood plant medicine on the level of what makes this work as medicine in human beings for infections and nausea and fevers. And my dad just knew all this stuff. And so we were kind of raised uh, like with hippie medicine. And none of it, we were all we got embarrassed when we were teenagers and we are just kind of like, okay, dad and mom, you get embarrassed of your parents. But then as adults, and my youngest sibling is now 42.
Mm.
So all of us, I'm in my 60s now, so it's like all of us are way adults and we have realized the massive gift that my dad gave us because we were able to raise our own kids this way. Many of us have grandkids, and this is now a generational thing that we all get to participate in on a really beautiful level. So I think that's just kind of in a nutshell, a little bit about what I do. My dad passed away 27 years ago, and I feel sometimes like the luckiest person in the world that I get to carry on his work and do what I do.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
this book that you sent me is a beautiful collection of plants that heal. So talk to us about, we get caught up. I've got some in my, we get caught up on, big pharma, those types of things. And then there was the whole raid of doTERRA essential oils or whatever essential oils you were using. Tell us what this really is. This is different from even all of that.
Yeah, it is different because to me, the medicine that we get, it first should start with your food. And that's why in the book, there's a lot of spices that are in there that are just considered food, like cayenne pepper and garlic and basil and rosemary, things that people are familiar with, but might not realize the power of the serious medicine that they contain for just like skin health and digestive health and metabolism and heart health. Like cayenne is really good for your heart. It's good for your vascular system. It's good for so many things. So my main reason for really updating my dad's work and bringing this out is not just honoring his legacy, but helping people realize that our health is really simple and we need to take it back to the foods that we eat. And from my perspective, from what I've seen, there are more and more and more people that have been jumping on this bandwagon. And it's been really brilliant to see it happen. So that's why the book, it really needed to be birthed. So there it is. It got birthed.
Well, tell us a little bit about your own lifestyle. If you want to see Jane, hop on over to the YouTube. She does not look 60. So tell us a little bit about your own lifestyle, your food choices. What is the legacy you're bringing to your kids, your grandkids?
Yeah, and I'm actually almost 64. So there you go.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, so this is where I think I feel like I'm in a like a really perfect position because I'm not saying in my 20s or 30s, oh, do these lifestyle things and use this herbal medicine and it will help you with this. Like I'm in my 60s and I have now decades worth of experience and proof is in the pudding, right? It's like I'm not going to tell someone that this is going to help with, I've already been through menopause. I
Mhm.
used herbal medicine all the way through menopause. And this is where I realized, and all my sisters, because there's 9 girls in my family and 5 boys. So the majority of my siblings are women. And most of us, there's still a couple who haven't, but most of us have already gone through menopause. So we got to add these adaptogens and different things that helped our hormones as we were going through. So I think that uh I feel like this wise old sage
Uh-huh.
sometimes. And it's really fun to share these things like with I have a 13-year-old granddaughter who now uses adaptogens
Hmm.
and things when she's having her monthly period. And So it's just this really beautiful tradition that I get to carry on. And it's holistic. For the first 20 years of my career, I was in fitness. I used to own my own gym. I was a personal trainer. I taught fitness classes, and I still to this day work out every day. That's a really important part of the lifestyle that I lead. And I keep checks on my stress. I get plenty of sleep. I hydrate, I eat clean. It's really holistic. And I know for a lot of people, it sounds like, okay, that's really a lot and it's overwhelming, but it's one thing at a time. I dial in this piece, I dial in this piece, and then it's just the compound effect. Things, little habits over time compound into big, beautiful things. And your health, here's the thing. If people were to start some of these habits, I don't care what age you are, your body will respond so fast because our normal homeostasis is wellness. This is where our body goes to first. And think about all the things that we do, like all of the bad food things and the stress and the non-sleep and the addicted to our technology and all of these things. And we still survive. So when
Hmm.
you start turning some of these things around, your body goes, oh, okay. And it starts to give you a response that's vibrant health. And it can happen really quickly. I've seen people turn around so fast.
Tell us, so spell out the adaptogen and what is happening, because that hormone fluctuation, whether you are 13 and just starting through the whole pregnancy years back into menopause, that can have a huge factor on mood, weight, even tone of voice, how we're
Yeah.
dealing with people. What
Yeah.
does adaptogen mean? What are you really talking about that you and your sisters, and it's not like you had a tiny sample size. You've got a pretty good size sample size of women who are
Huge.
using it.
Huge, huge, huge. Yeah. And of course, there's all the daughters and all the daughter-in-laws that now all of us have. But so an adaptogen, if you think about what it means to adapt, so an adaptogenic herb literally means that you've got something that helps your body adapt. So think about women, as every single month we have fluctuations in our hormones, every single month from when we first start having our periods. Every month we get these, and then you go through childbirth, then you go through um, all the things that we go through, and then you layer on the modern stress, and that also makes our hormones fluctuate as well. Like there are all these things that we're such beautiful, complex, but perfectly designed um, biology that if we understand the way our hormones work and how adaptogens can help do that and can help balance it, then that actually it makes it simple. But an adaptogenic herb literally will go in and balance body chemistry. So there's a beautiful herb that I love. Not a lot of people are familiar with it. It's called Suma, Suma, and it's an adaptogenic herb that you use the root, and it comes from Brazil. And basically, it's one of the most powerful adaptogens that I use, especially during menopause. And even as I was working out, because I was always in the gym when I was, because we want testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. We want all of them. Even as women, we want our testosterone to be at the levels it's supposed to be. So with Suma Root, what I found is that if you have low testosterone as a woman, it'll help bring it to the balance where it needs to be. If you have high testosterone or high estrogen, Suma Root will bring it and it will balance it to where it needs to be if it's too high. So, and the way you can check on some of these things is you go get a hormone panel. You can go get it's a very simple blood test. You go get a hormone panel and you can see exactly what your hormones are doing. And you don't have to do it all the time. I'd say once a year if you're interested, or every 6 months if you want to kind of keep an eye on the different things that you're doing. But Suma Root is one of my favorites. There's things like ashwagandha, rhodiola. Another favorite for women is maca root. It
Hmm.
is also a powerful adaptogen, and they're super easy to get. They're easy to add to smoothies. They're easy to take in capsules or tincture. But the due diligence is where this comes in. Do some due diligence and see what works for you. But that in a nutshell is adaptogens.
And when you're talking about a hormone panel, that's a simple blood draw. They
Yep.
spin it out. and they give you pretty readable information. It doesn't take
Yeah.
a lot to read it. Um, so my worry always with this is we've gotten into this sense of we need it to be FDA regulated, or we need this kind of regulation, or we need this. When unfortunately, Big Pharma is relatively self-regulated, so we really don't know what we're getting, even though we say we have these tests. How do you, if you're going to add maca, if you're going to add suma, if you're going to add these types of things, how do you source this so that most of us are not going to go pull it out of the ground. Brazil would be fun, but we're not going to go that way. Um, how do you know what you're getting and how do you know what to look for? And dosing, I guess that's my biggest fear is dosing, is how do you do that?
Okay, all perfect questions. Okay, so let me just say first, dosing. Okay. Um, at, think of it this way. As modern humans, we think that if we take a little bit, that a lot is better. So first of all, you don't need to take a lot. And you can always start with a low dose of something. And usually on almost any supplements that you purchase, there will be directions and there'll be guidance, right? And at the very least, or at the very most, you can go find a functional medicine doctor, a naturopathic doctor, someone that you can have on your team that can help guide you. And I would suggest that everyone who is totally intimidated by this whole thing find themselves someone in their area that can guide them because that's a really good way to go if you can. But also know this. You might get some nausea, you might get an upset stomach or diarrhea if you take too much of an herb. But the chances of you getting hurt or dying from it, uh, you don't hear that. I've been doing this my whole life, and someone might get a little sick from something if they take too much, but um, this is what humans have been doing forever. And then this is really this is such a good question because how do you find good sourcing? So let me tell you what we do. So we have a lot of herbs that come into the manufacturing facility and we put it through a really comprehensive test, lab test. It covers heavy metals, mold, if they have any mold, it covers any other microbes like funguses or bacterias. And then it also tests it for correct species. So there are some plants like echinacea. There's Echinacea angustifolia and Echinacea purpurea. So if we say this is Echinacea purpurea, is that really the species that's in our stuff? So
Mm.
everything is tested for all of these things. Then what happens? They get made into either a capsule or a tincture, whatever they're being made into, and then they get another lab test at the final product to make sure that all of the markers are there. All the herbs we say are in it are in it. And then what is produced with every batch is what's called a COA, which is a certificate of analysis. And anyone can email our company, call our company, and they can say, hey, I just bought some of this. I'd love to see the lab test on it, the COA. And we will email it to them. And it'll be the exact number that matches on the bottom of their bottle, the batch number and the lot number. And it'll be the exact, it'll match because we do this for every batch. So any company that you find should be able to produce that for you. If you find a really good company you love, you should. And so this is where the due diligence comes in. People have to be willing to say, either call up a company, send them an email and say, hey, I really love this product that you're advertising or you've got. Do you have a COA? And just remember that stands for Certificate of Analysis. You can even just say lab tests if you forget about that. But just ask them to show you what they do. And this is where transparency comes in.
Hmm.
People should be able to give you what they say they're giving you. So
Now, when you named about four different things for, we'll just stick with the menopause and the estrogen. How would you know what to mix and match? Is that finding the functional medicine doctor? Explain what a functional medicine doctor is. Sometimes that's a hard concept to.
yeah, well, so basically, I think it's a step above a medical doctor because I think a lot of times medical doctors don't have the time to spend with you and they're really just trying to cover up symptoms. And there's a lot of I have really good friends in the medical industry. and they are really good people. But a functional medicine doctor is someone, from my experience, who will actually sit down with you, especially on the first visit, and find out what's going on in your life and what all of the things are that you're dealing with. And they might do some basic labs to see what's going on with your systems and all the things that you're having issues with. And then they'll guide you. They'll guide you in, you might need acupuncture, you might need you might need some herbal medicine. You might need to change your diet. You might need to lower your stress. You might need a combination of all those things. So a functional medicine doctor will look at you holistically. They're not just going to say, oh, you have a problem with your throat. Let's go send you to a specialist to take a look at that. Look at your throat, but what might be happening with your throat is something that's going on with another part of your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a functional medicine doctor looks at you holistically.
And as you're with your sample size of all your sisters, of all the daughters, of all the folks who are doing this, what has been their experience of not getting on the estrogen progesterone train, of choosing to do it herbally? Did it take an enormous amount of work to find your food, find your right supplements, do the exercise? What does that look like compared to the standard Western model?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it takes, work is, I think people would consider it work, but I think you have to choose your hard. You can do the hard stuff now, which I don't think it's hard to me. It's like to get my sleep. I sleep like a baby and I've never had sleep issues. Stress levels, what you eat. So you have to be willing to kind of do that because it's hard for some people to eat healthy if they have little kids or they have kids in college or they have a full-time job or all of the above. All of these things are hard. It's hard to get your lifestyle stuff in. So you can choose that hard right now, or you can choose the hard later, which is poor health and poor sleep. And, you can mess yourself up for later if you don't do the hard stuff now. So I would say that most of my siblings and most of my nieces and the in-laws, the daughter-in-laws from my siblings, because I have an amazing daughter-in-law myself, and the lifestyle thing with the nutrition and the exercise and the low stress those are big players. You can't just cover up lifestyle mishaps with herbs. You have to get those other things in place. And it does take work. It takes some, you really have to just say, okay, I don't care what anyone else is doing. I'm going to do this. And over the years, my friendship bases have changed. Like there's people I don't hang out with because I don't want to meet them for a burger or a glass of wine because I did used to drink a glass of wine every now and again, but now I don't drink. I don't. And so I've lost a group of friends who I used to meet up for lunch and we'd have a glass of wine. And it just kind of organically fell off. And I'm not saying I would never have lunch with them, but there's things in your life that have to change. And you have to be willing to do the hard stuff so you can get to the good stuff.
Now, you started out by saying food as medicine.
Yeah.
Food is really the first base that you go to. I've been watching some documentaries and things. I'm not even sure, unless I plant it, that the food is of highest value. At the time of this, we've got the whole egg scare right now to where eggs have become pricier than, filet mignon. How do we even begin to look at our food when we may not have local growers? We may not have local eggs or meat produced.
Well, perfect question again. I think it boils down to a couple things. First of all, we need to eat simpler. So we need to eat as close to nature as we can. We also need to realize that we don't need as much food as we're used to. I think we're just used to continually eating. So and I'm not saying people should starve. I'm just saying for the most part, most human beings, we eat for comfort, we eat for emotions, we eat because it's convenient. And I think we can swap some of these habits. And then this is one of the most beautiful things that my parents gifted us with. when you sit down at a dinner table with like 10 siblings, because I'm one of the oldest, my mom had a couple of babies after I'd left the home. So you sit down at a dinner table, and if it wasn't the most, my parents scraped together a lot of meals for us during some of the lean times. And it might not have been the most nutritious. It was the best they could do at certain times. And my dad always said we always gave a prayer before we we always blessed our food every meal. It wasn't just the dinner meal. We always blessed the food at every meal. And my dad said, this is why we bless the food, because what we're eating, we are blessing it with the nutrition that we need. And I believe that through prayer, we can literally change the structure of the food that nourishes us. And that's really powerful. So we got to do the best we can through some of these times where our food systems are maybe a little sketchy and maybe a little unsure what the sourcing is. And then the power of blessing your food it's more than people realize.
That's amazing. I was just watching something and he said, we blessed every meal except for breakfast. And I just thought God was not an early riser, is why we didn't bless breakfast. And I'm like, I think back to my family too, and
Yeah.
we were blessing the meals, but breakfast got skipped for whatever reason. And we did have breakfast together. So I don't know what that was about. That is really the Holy Spirit can make
Yeah.
structural changes when needed for our food.
Yeah.
When you are looking at folks who are really struggling
Mm.
with, say, food addiction, or not being able to get off the processed foods, what is your suggestion for them? How do they begin to reframe that diet?
Well, I think the first thing is people need to realize that these processed foods are literally designed and formulated to keep you addicted. They're formulated that way. And here's the thing, willpower is not something that works. In fact, my nephew wrote a great book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And he talks about the whole psychology behind it, which is basically
Is your nephew Ben Hardy?
he is. You know Ben Hardy?
I know Ben Hardy. I've been in his groups. I've read his books. I
No.
recommend 10x is easier than 2x. What what a small world. That's
Yeah, my
fantastic.
one of my sisters is his mom.
That is fantastic. Well, that answers some questions. And he writes about a rough time in his life when he was basically living on soda and processed food and chips and those types of things, and that had to turn around.
Yeah, and faith and action and all this stuff is very, very big in his work. He's yeah, he's but he in this book, so I love that you are familiar with his work, and that's amazing. In fact, if you've ever heard any of his books where he talks about Aunt Jane, that's me.
Oh, you are Aunt Jade. Okay. So, well, so will personality isn't permanent, I think is one of the first ones that came out. Was fabulous because you're
Yeah,
looking at it going, I don't have to do what my parents did. I don't have to continue to do the things that they did. And just in my experience with the age of my mom was born during World War II. So she grew up with this culture of Betty Crocker, of boxed mixes. How do we do it fast, get it on the table quickly? But
yeah,
she also grew up in a rural area to where their vegetables, her father was a farmer and a cattleman, and all of that came from, so she's kind of that mixed culture, where she grew up with all the whole foods, but then was given through the new media, do it like this. And that's where I think Ben begins to turn this around and say, you are not stuck in this personality that the family gave you. And then his next book, Willpower Doesn't Work. You were getting ready to illuminate us on that. Give us some more around that, Aunt Jane.
I know, right? Now, okay, I officially adopt you, Tanya. Whether you want it or not. No, so basically, the main premise that I love about it is you have to get the things that tempt you out of your environment, because you can say, okay, I'm going to do this. But if you have a cupboard full of cookies and potato chips and processed food, you're going to have a moment where it's like, okay, today was super hard. I just need to chill out and I just want to munch on a bag of chips and I deserve it because I worked hard or
Mhm.
whatever. So you literally have to change the things that are in your house, and you have to stop hanging out with people that so you can like sit with your little salad while other people eat burger and fries. So you have to change your environment, which is your willpower will only work for a certain amount of time. And it goes into a lot of other psychology about all of that. And but that to me is one of my favorite pieces is that your willpower is a muscle and it eventually will wear out. And you need to be prepared with, so this to me is like people who are struggling to say, oh my gosh, like I've got all these things. Um, and here's another thing, stop with the technology. People need to take breaks from their technology. This is one of my, I watch the addiction because people think, oh, I eat clean, I exercise every day, um, I sleep good, but then that where their addiction comes in is they're scrolling, they're watching constant YouTube videos. It's like you have to disconnect because you're getting a lot more programming than you should be getting.
A lot more information. The other piece that I really like that Ben throws in there is the forcing function.
Hmm.
That, like you're saying, by cleaning out the cabinets, you are creating a forcing function that at 5, 6 o'clock, when my decision fatigue sets in, if there are no potato chips, I am probably not going to get in the car, take my pennies, go down there and buy them. But if they are in the space, I have not created a forcing function that says you would really have to do something to get this. And
Yes.
I won't pay attention to it. And I've even found that this is so baffling to me. So I have teenage sons who buy their own things. If I put them in a cabinet that I don't use very often, I won't think about it anymore. So I've created this forcing function out of, okay, all this stuff goes over here, and if I don't see it, I don't think about it. But to
That's good.
bring that back to food as medicine and then the herbal tinctures and support systems. Tell us more about the company that you have that produces this, because this book is beautiful and we were talking about it. I absolutely love it, and it was called The Shepherd's Purse when your father was had it. I would be a little concerned about going out and picking all my own stuff and cutting it up and putting it in tinctures. Did I get the right plant? Does this really look like the one I was looking at? But you've taken some of that hard work out of it by having a company that produces some of these things.
Yeah, that's true. But there is a big piece of the inspiration for this book is to empower people. That's why there are so many user-friendly herbs in there that people don't have to second guess in the identification process. Everyone knows what a dandelion looks like. Everyone
Or a
knows what Italian,
raspberry or a
yeah, and a
garlic. There are
raspberry.
several things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, even remember when my dad released his book. I was a senior in high school, and I remember his book was a little bit more hardcore as far as with the medicinal herbals. He did have cayenne pepper in there, so that is a powerhouse herb that everybody should know about. If you're going to add one herb to your routine, and I'm not like a person who loves hot, spicy foods because I have a really sensitive palate. But I take cayenne pepper in capsules every single day because I know the power of this herb. So if I'm not going to add it to my foods, then I'm gonna take it in supplement form. But I think the goal really is to pique people's interests in the possibility of what if we had this herbal apothecary, like I have a, you should see what I mean, I'm kind of a freak of nature when it comes to the all the herbal remedies because I have a whole formulation process that I do, and I have a
Right.
ton of single herbs that are curing. And so what I do in my own personal life for my family is really kind of amazing and next level. But the thing is this. I think if people start educating themselves and start using the simple things that can give them confidence, then you start to just add things like feverfew is really amazing for fevers, headaches, migraines, and then add that. Put that in a tincture in your little cupboard, get a little dedicated cupboard and start using these things every day. It's like, oh, well, if I get a cold, then I'm going to take some antiviral and I'm going to start using it.
Mm,
And then yourself get better. And then we also need to realize that sometimes we get a little bit worse before we get better. Like when you have a fever, your body is heating up to heal you. And
mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you should let a fever rage out of control, but think about what happens when you get a fever. You lose your appetite because you know what your body's telling you? Don't eat. I'm trying to heal. So it's not like, well, what is it? Feed a fever and starve a cold. That's opposite. Opposite. If you
Okay.
have a fever and you don't have an appetite, don't eat. And that might sound like crazy, crazy wisdom, or I'm a crazy woman, but I think learning about these things can give us more confidence when we start using them.
So if you're a mom and somebody is really struggling with addiction, and we know that gut, that gut health is part of what's causing this numbing out. It could be trauma, it could be other things, but some of that numbing out is caused because the gut's not responding well, things are not moving well. What is something simple you could add into your family's diet? Maybe even secretly add into your family's diet that might help their gut health, as if you're the one preparing the food, they're still coming in for dinner, that type of thing. What is something that might help them process emotions, deal with the things they've got to deal with?
So that was kind of multi-layered as far as digestion and then process emotion. So maybe let's just start with the digestion thing. You think about and I think this really coming to the forefront and has for a lot of years now, where really our second brain is in our gut. You think
Mm,
about our microbiome, and we need to realize this as well. Inside of our microbiome is a virome. We are made up of viruses, funguses, yeast, and when they get out of control is when they cause problems. But if you need to get on a prescription antibiotic, which I'm not against because sometimes they're necessary, but it wipes out all your beneficial flora. And at this point, people know that. We are becoming a much more educated society of human beings because these are things that are coming out. It's like try your best not to have to take a prescription antibiotic. So if you learn about herbal medicine on the level of what are some powerful antivirals. In fact, before we started recording, you opened the book and I think it was OSHA
uh-huh.
root. So
Yeah.
OSHA is a powerful antiviral and it has a special affinity for the lungs. So OSHA root is something that I would turn to if I had a lung infection. And and then if it's in tincture form, you take it, the tincture doesn't have to digest. It goes right into your lungs, right into your bloodstream, and it acts really fast. So if you have the ability and the knowledge to actually use something that's not going to destroy your microbiome, um, that's a really great place to start. If you know that and this is where a functional medicine doctor that can come in. They
Mm,
can see what's going on with your gut, what's going on. They can do some tests for your digestion and your constipation and like your gut flora. What you might need to take a really good probiotic.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think every person's a little bit different. But then as far as the emotional, oh my goodness, that opens up a whole big thing because emotional trauma causes health problems. And it causes chronic pain. I used to have people all the time come to me and say, I'm having this chronic pain. I didn't injure myself. I didn't really, but I think I'm just getting older, or I think got out of bed wrong, and then they have chronic pain. And about 10, 11 years ago, I was having some chronic pain that was caused from emotional things going on in my marriage and different things. And I was lucky enough to meet a man named Stephen Ozanich, who wrote a book called The Great Pain Deception. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, and I had a consultation with him, and then I read his book, and then I had another consultation. And after reading the book, the chronic pain I had been suffering with for about 4 years, 90% of it cleared up just by reading his book. And he calls that knowledge therapy. So what happens, just in a nutshell, is our physical body creates real pain to distract us from emotional pain. And for a lot of women, because we're do-gooders and we're caretakers and we're nurturers, we put ourselves last. We
Yeah.
also don't want to say if our husband's bugging us or something makes us mad, we're too nice, and we don't want to ruffle the feathers. We want to take care of people, we want to nurture people. So what happens is our body creates physical pain to distract us from the emotional pain. And it might be something as silly as your husband leaves his socks every time on the floor, even when you tell him not to. It might be something that simple, but
Right.
it makes you so mad and so full of rage that your body, now your back goes out or you get a migraine. And it's like, now you're not focused on how mad you are at your husband. You have to go lay down because you have a migraine or your back is out. But and the pain is real. The physical pain, it's debilitating for a lot of people. So that's a whole nother, I think it's a missing puzzle piece to,
That's
um,
amazing. That's
yeah,
like I was involved with a family that every time life got stressful, mom ended up in the hospital.
yeah, yeah, of
So, life was truly stressful, and there were things that were
course.
going on, and there were issues going on with, different members of the family. Her answer for that was to pretty much, it's almost like that when the body eats itself,
Yeah.
to take on all the psychological issues of everybody. And then she went to the hospital because it gave her a break. So that is a really amazing book. And your story is amazing that you read it, and having the knowledge changed the pain, because it isn't
Yeah.
about the socks on the ground, right? It's about,
Right.
how could he be so careless? Doesn't he care about me? Why would he not really realize how problematic this is for me? He must not love me. He must not want to take care of me. I mean, the downward spiral is just enormous.
Well, and it's not just that. It's the most interesting thing for me as I've studied this whole thing is it's the rage. We might feel like, okay, why doesn't he pick up his socks if he must not love me. But what a lot of women might not realize, because they don't want to see themselves as a rageful or angry or bitter person. So we stuff all those down because but there's the biggest underlying issue with pain is rage. And it's so interesting to say that, because that was why I was having all this chronic pain myself, is because I am the peacemaker. I am the caretaker. I am the one who handles all the stuff. And I would tell myself, what's the big deal? I just need and it wasn't the socks for my husband, but just as an example, it's not a
Right.
big deal just to pick up his socks. It's just not
Right.
that big of a deal. But underneath there's a boiling rage happening that I can't express because I'm too nice.
Well, and women are taught not to express it. I mean, we
Yes,
we are not seen as, well, there are ugly words for us when we express that kind of
right,
rage. And I don't have a word for it, but a smoothing over of, that's not the way you're taught to behave. That's not who you
right.
are. That's not an identity. And as a person who does do rage, so coming at it from a different angle of being really, really angry to the point where I saw damage to my family because I was expressing it in a way that was not biblical, not healthy. But I also knew that if I didn't get it out, there's something innate in me that said, I'm going to feel sick if I don't produce this
Yeah,
out. So I produced
yeah,
it out, but the damage did extensive damage to the people who had to suck it up because I was behaving
Right.
that way. So I think what I'm hearing you say is my experience of managing rage is putting it out may have saved me from some physical ailments. On the other hand, it's causing physical ailments to other people. So how, what do we even begin to do to process this in a way that doesn't harm me, doesn't harm you, and doesn't have these resentments to the point where we're just a boiling pot?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's actually it's a very simple answer. And this is what did it for me. So because I'm like you. I would reach a point where I would boil up. I would reach a boiling point, and then I would say things that and I regretted and I hurt people
Yes, I
because it
did.
had reached such a boiling point. So after I met this author of this book, and we've since have become very dear friends, but basically his suggestion, one of the things is that you have what's called a rage journal. So I started, what this does is this takes the edge off, and I started journaling, and I realized that when you want to get as ugly as you can and petty, and you want to write things you would never dream of saying out loud. And it's a little embarrassing when you first do this because you just think, oh my God, that's so ugly. I can't imagine that's coming out of me. But what that does is that actually gets that out on paper. Now, the goal of this Rage Journal is not to keep it, its posterity, go back and read it. No, that is not the point of this at all. And when I first started doing this, I would rip the page out and I would shred it like almost right away because I was so embarrassed of what came out, right? And then over these years, because it's still something that's very important to me. I journal every day. I don't do my rage journal every day because I don't need to.
Right.
But what I've now come to is I journal out my stuff, and my body will always give me clues. If I start having pain somewhere, I'm like, okay, what's happening? Because your body is giving you a clue. If
Hmm.
especially if you didn't injure yourself or you didn't have surgery or something didn't just happen that if you just start getting pain out of nowhere, something's happening. So I write it out and I get whatever needs to come out. And then I go back the next morning and I read it because it validates my feelings. And then I shred it. So I've never shared with anyone. And then what happens is now I've gotten all that ugliness out. I feel like so much better. And then I can go have a really good, rational conversation, whether it be with my husband and I've been married a really long time. Marriages are tough and marriages are challenging. And most of my raging has been at my husband, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the reason we're still together and I'm not in any kind of pain anymore is because I can get these things out that need to come out, and then I can come to the conversation that I need to have with him, and it's more calm. In fact, it's all calm because I've been able to work it out, and I don't have to say things. And I've said things that have hurt people. Yeah, we all can understand that, right?
And then you don't have to go back and fix something because
Right,
you didn't damage it in the first place.
right.
Plus, you are also freeing, wherever emotions get stuck, different places, different times, you're
Yeah.
freeing those emotions. So, what we're learning now is that pain in my shoulder is because I didn't deal with this issue that happened between my husband and I, or, that pain in my hip. Hips are a big trapper of those emotions. That pain in my hip is. I don't need a medicine for it or a number for it or something like that. I need to deal with the emotional background behind it,
Yeah,
which
well,
is
if you think
enormous.
about people, especially women who don't have chronic pain, you might think that they're a little bit abrasive, like because they're able to get the things that they want to say out. If you think of someone like I have a sister like that. She's lovely. She's amazing. She has no chronic pain and never has, but she says what's on her mind. And if you bother her in the moment or she doesn't agree with something you're saying, she doesn't just swallow it or try to cover it up or try to play nice. She just says, "Hey, well, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't like that you said that." So she gets, and she never has chronic pain. She's only like a few years younger than me. And it's like, so I think that it's a really beautiful thing to be able to express your truth in the moment. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And that's one thing I don't have to rage journal things out anymore, like all the time. Now I can say in the moment, hey, this is not right. This is not making me happy. Let's change this. And I can come from a lot more centered.
Amazing, amazing. And some of that is knowing your values and knowing who you are, which
100%.
as we move into the wise woman ages, we're able to say, hey, that's not who I am and that's not how I play this game anymore.
Totally. This
Jane,
is my favorite age being ever.
I'm still settling into it, but it is something that I'm coming finally into my own, and I hope the women listening to this have gotten the value that we have moved from the body wisdom and the awareness that there are medicines out there that are not synthetics that can heal us to the emotions that we may or may not be working with are causing some of this chronic pain. So, Jane, tell us a little bit more about your website, your company, where we find you, all of that.
Yeah, so my company is Barlow Herbal, which my dad started 50 years ago this year. And then he passed away 27 years ago and I restarted it and so it's barlowherbal.com, super easy to find. I have a little YouTube channel where I've actually interviewed the guy who wrote The Great Pain Deception. I have 6 interviews with him on my channel.
Okay.
So Barlow Herbal is just the YouTube. And I have a little Instagram account, but I'm easy to find.
Awesome. Well, Jane, thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here. This has been enlightening. We've kind of traveled the whole piece in there. I really appreciate your candor and your honesty. And certainly go and check out her website and her YouTube channel, The Great Pain Deception. Ladies, that is a place to start running right now and see if you have taken in an idea that is causing you to physically not feel well, and that can change. So thank you, Jane. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Tanya. Lovely.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.